We have this weird thing in our culture that's like, if you don't cry, oh, you're being so strong. No, it doesn't make you strong. It doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you healthier. But it really might be that you are getting stuck because you don't know how to let that out.
Imagine being emotionally and spiritually stronger. What would it look like to know you can be okay when hard things happen? Welcome to the Healing Her podcast. Listen in as best friends Christy and Donna share stories of God's healing work in their lives. Donna is a licensed therapist, and Christy is a veteran communicator in the marketing world. In Season 2, Healing Her Grief, they share their own stories of walking through loss, process the stages of grief, and provide some do's and don'ts to better care for grieving people. So whether you're seeking comfort, understanding, or support, Christy and Donna invite you to grab a cup of coffee and join them at the table as we navigate the challenging journey of loss and find hope on the other side.
A client comes into my office. She makes herself comfortable on the couch. She grabs the weighted blanket. She puts a pillow in her lap. She gives me a little update about how she's been doing. She talks again about her dad passing away. She shares a dream she had about him last week, and she shares some guilt about some relief she's experiencing since he's passed. And she asks me, am I normal? This is so common. There are so many things that are confusing to us or so different from how we've lived before loss that I know I keep saying it. People are always wondering, is this normal?
But are people afraid to admit it?
They are. They are. So a client that's asking, that's admitting, I feel relieved,
Right.
that my life is getting back to normal. They feel real guilt about that. But they may have been walking through a season where someone in their life got sick, and maybe their life became full of doctor's appointments and medicine schedules and needing to make sure someone has a place to rest and things like that. And maybe that's interrupted your friendships. Maybe that's interrupted your career and things like that. So when things are returning to some kind of sense of normal, there's a tension that shows up for people that says, I shouldn't be feeling this way. But of course, what am I going to say? It's okay. It's okay to hold space for all of that. I remember, so my dad, passed away over 20 years ago. And when he did, my sister was crying so hard. And my husband just reached over to her and said, are you okay? And she said, yes. For the first time in 13 years, he is out of pain. And she experienced the relief that he's no longer suffering. But people also experience the relief of my life is no longer about doctor's appointments. So all of that is normal.
So what do you do with the guilt that you feel? When you're relieved.
You just hold space for it. Remember, the message of guilt is I've done something wrong.
Okay.
And so we can go back and go, am I doing something wrong? No. Your loved one that you've lost, they do want your life to have a sense of normalcy again. They don't want you to spend all of your time sad and not moving forward. So again, it's holding space for all the different parts of the feelings that come up when we go through a hard experience or we lose a person that was special to us.
I wonder, when you evaluate, have I done something wrong? Because you're feeling guilty, that gives you an opportunity to really look at situations. And if you have done something wrong, you can repent.
That's right.
You can actually say, I'm sorry that I said that or I felt that. It's a great opportunity to just confess.
That's right. That's right. And then move on. Right? So it's really common for caregivers to often feel guilty that they feel relief. Often when the suffering has ended and life is not full of hospital visits, we are able to remember the loved one as they were before. And that in itself is a type of healing.
I love that. So what else are we dealing with?
Well, tears. Tears are super normal. It's your body's way of regulating your emotions.
And I remember in our book, On Grief and Grieving, the authors write that the worst thing you can do is to stop short of really letting it out. So uncried tears have a way of filling the well of sadness even more deeply.
Yes, that's right. And you have an experience around that.
So at Christmas time, this was so unexpected. My family was gathered in the living room. Jeff had read the Christmas story, and we were opening cards from my mom. And I opened mine, and it said, "Love, Mom." And my dad wasn't on the card. He's in heaven. And it was the first Christmas that he wasn't there. And there was an eruption of tears. I didn't know I was going to cry. I just cried and cried. And it wasn't a cry like silent. It was wailing. It was wailing.
I'm so sorry.
And my family held space for that. It was awkward for them,
of
for
course.
sure.
Yeah.
But they held space for me, and Jeff comforted me. And after a while, it was over, and we could move on. But I was so surprised by all of those tears.
And it had been several months. But I think one of the things, it's kind of an emerging theme, is it kind of doesn't matter how much time has passed.
Correct.
There can just be these waves of grief. And that's one way that we even talk about the tears is, some days it's like the ocean, how the ocean is calm some days. Some days the ocean is tumultuous. Some days the ocean is calm, and then there's this giant wave out of nowhere. And that is literally how we describe grief, is that it doesn't make sense. We don't have to put it in a box. With the tears, I love the story. I love several stories that Jesus has no problem with our tears, right? So he even cries when he sees Mary crying and that she's upset that Lazarus has gone, even though he's going to raise him from the dead, he still weeps. Or we see the woman who has washed his feet with her tears and wiped his feet with her hair. Jesus honors her. He does not criticize her for crying in public. We have this weird thing in our culture that's like, if you don't cry, oh, you're being so strong. No, it doesn't make you strong. It doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you healthier. But it really might be that you are getting stuck because you don't know how to let that out.
My mom recently went to a funeral for her neighbor, and she was fine until the end of the service, and they played the song "I Will Always Love You." And those are the words she said to my dad right before he passed. And it just really struck a deep chord of grief. And she was so surprised by that. She called me afterwards and was crying a little bit and just said, I didn't think I was going to cry again. But I think crying again, we can expect that.
That's right. You're gonna be watching a commercial. And you are going to laugh. And it's gonna remind you of your friend or whatever. And you're gonna pick up your phone to text them and remember, they're gone. And you may cry. And that's okay. It's just your nervous system releasing that. It's just your nervous system coming back to a state of calm again. And so there's no reason to judge it. It's okay to just let that out.
I love that. So what if there's a time when it's not okay to cry?
It's such a good question, right? I remember a friend of mine that was going into a job interview. She was going through a divorce. She's returning to the workforce. And she needed to do the job interview, needed the job, but she was really struggling.
God bless her.
And I said, okay, when you get there, I just want you to put your hand on your chest before you even get out of the car. Put your hand on your chest, and I want you to be so kind to yourself. And I want you to say, I know you're hurting right now. And it's normal that you're hurting. And we're going to go rock this job interview. And when we come back, we can let it all out again. But right now, we're not going to cry in the job interview.
I'm so surprised that works.
I know. But when we treat ourselves like we're human beings, it's like you're just giving yourself permission to go, okay, we can do this later.
Sure.
I can kind of hold this until another time, and just give yourself permission.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Another thing that may be surprising and that surprises a lot of people is dreams.
Oh.
Super common for people to have dreams after they have lost someone.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to read just a few things about the research on dreams.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah. So research says that dreams have several purposes. One is to help us deal with the overwhelming feelings that we experience in loss. Dreams help us visualize what's really happening inside of us.
Okay.
So our book talks about one man who had a dream that he was lifting weights, and weights kept being added to the bar that he was trying to lift. And it was a visual image of, this is too heavy and it's too fast. It was after his wife died, and he was just dying under the weight of it all. And sometimes we get reminded of the healthier version of the person that we lost, and it can just be a little moment of joy there.
Yeah. Yes.
My dad passed away in February of 2001, and the following Easter, I had a dream about him.
Okay.
That he was alive.
Wow.
Now, his body was still really broken in the dream, but I was overjoyed that he was alive. And I just wanted to tell everyone. And that dream did a couple of things for me.
Okay.
One, when I woke up, I cried harder than I had cried since he had died.
Okay.
So I think the dream really helped me access some grief that needed to be released from my body.
Wow.
But it also gave me a new experience of the resurrection, because it was, I knew that my dad had died, and then he was alive again. And it was like, it has never left me, that experience of, wow, Christ died and he rose again. And it's always been a really meaningful experience to me.
That's beautiful. I know when my dad died, I had this, it wasn't a dream, but it was a realization that he is a new man.
Yeah.
He is not just a new man. He is the man
Yeah.
that God created him to
Yeah.
be. And I get to meet him someday
Yeah.
when I go to heaven, and I will be a new woman.
Yeah.
I'll be who God
Yeah.
intended me to be.
Yeah.
And that has been so helpful. Heaven has become so much more real to me now
Yes.
that I know that my dad is there.
Yeah.
And he's waiting for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really beautiful, Christy.
So tell me, how do you keep up with the dreams?
Well, I do keep a journal by my bed. I don't necessarily get up and journal in the middle of the night, but I will typically in the morning. If I've had a dream that's really impacted me, I will write that down. And I really encourage my clients to write down dreams that they've had, because it's important to externalize our grief. So they write it down. I encourage them, come back in 24 hours and read it, come back in a week and read it, look at it again in a year, and you are going to learn some things about yourself that you didn't know, because there's so much going on inside of us.
Right. I have a friend who journaled her way through grief after a major loss, and she was able to process not smoothly, but process all of these stages of grief.
Yes.
And keep track of that. And just as you said, to look back and find out more about yourself, and also find out how the Lord was using that journaling to speak truth to her, and to help her know that she wasn't alone in her grief. And it's actually a beautiful standing stone now for her to look back on.
Yeah. And really what I hear in that is, it's the story of what happened.
Yes.
And that's another really healing part of grief, is telling the story. So Christy, when you hear that someone has passed away, what's the next question you ask?
Oh, how did it happen?
Right. We want to know the story. And telling the story is a part of the healing. We often tell the story over and over. It is primal. And sometimes it's almost like it's a way of connecting our head and our heart because they're kind of stuck in the same place. It's pain, remembering pain. And so we're trying to make sense of it. We're asking the questions. What happened? Why did you move? How did the divorce happen? What's it like to be empty nesters?
Right.
We're constantly sharing the stories.
You know, I think two things that stand out to me from the funeral process that go along with story is first, you write the obituary.
Right.
You write the person's story.
Yes.
That is so helpful.
It is.
And I remember when my grandma passed away, I don't even know, is that 20 years ago now? I sat at the table with my mom and my aunt, and we wrote Grandma's story. And then just last year, gathering photos of my dad for the service. You know, we gathered photos of him being a roofer, you know, and him being a boss, and him being a dad, and him being a fisherman, and him being a grandpa, just all those things he loved. And it was a part of the story process that really helps us handle grief.
Yes. Have you noticed the story change over time?
Yes, as a matter of fact. Well, I know that when I called you to tell you that my dad had died, I was telling you about the 9-day process and how he died. And then I look back now on how I talk to my family or whoever about Dad, and it's talking about playing cards with Dad. It's about eating ice cream with Dad. It's about how he said things that were funny, how he changed the channel on the TV incessantly. You know, it's all of those things. It's memories about Dad instead of how Dad died.
That's right. That's right. And again, that just shows us that healing portion of when we tell the story, we no longer are focused on all of the painful details, but eventually we are remembering the healthy version of that person. We are laughing at funny things that they did. And so that is, again, it's just part of it. It's part of the process.
That's beautiful.
Telling the story also helps us connect to people around us. So we get to hear how other people experience the story. We get to hear their perspective.
I think another part of that funeral process is the day before the funeral when everyone comes and stands in line and tells you what they loved about your loved one. Hearing their stories. And some of it I didn't even know. Like my dad was so generous. And there were some instances that I didn't even know that he had helped people. Or he'd had roofed a house for free. You know, provided an opportunity for people to be safe. Things I never knew.
And that, again, it's even more healing, right? When we hear other people's perspective and experience of someone that we loved. So again, I encourage people to write out the story of someone's passing in their journal, to keep writing.
Keep writing.
Keep writing. I'm going to keep saying that. It is genuinely so therapeutic. I really encourage people to join a grief share group or a divorce care group, because then you are going to see how normal you are. You're going to hear other people's stories, and very often that's a comfort. To go, oh, I am not alone in this. Other people are trying to wrap their minds around this, and we can all experience this grief together.
Sure.
Bessel van de Kolk tells a story in The Body Keeps the Score about being in another country. I believe it was on the continent of Africa. There was a group of women that had experienced a communal tragedy, a trauma.
Oh, yes.
And one woman got up and began doing a storytelling dance.
Okay.
And as she danced, another woman would come up and join her, and another woman would come up and join her, and they were acting out the grief of their tragedy. And I just think it's such a beautiful story. They could see and experience, we are not alone here.
Right.
And that is just a really important part, too, of the grief process.
Right. Because we're made for connection.
That's right. We are made for connection. But we also see that sometimes after the funeral, people may isolate. It may feel better to pull back. People don't want to be around cheerful chatter and exciting events when they feel like, oh, I am so sad right now. We recently lost a friend of ours. And it was the day before our church was hosting a retreat on joy. And I just decided I cannot go to that. I was not in a place to talk about joy. And so I just gave myself permission to stay home with my husband and for us to just be sad.
Right.
So that was a little piece of isolation, right? But we don't want that to continue to get sort of more and more isolating.
So in our book, On Grief and Grieving, it talks about when you're ready to move out of isolation.
Yes.
So I just wanted to bring this sentence or two to the fore. If it's time for you to move beyond isolation, here are some ways to begin.
Okay.
So call a friend
Yep.
and ask for companionship. Introduce an activity like painting, gardening, or walking. And I really love this.
Yeah.
Nature has a way of healing.
It does. It really does. Being outside, taking walks. I know that was a real part of my healing journey with Waiting Comforts is I walked every day, just knowing that it was so good for my body to move and to be outside.
Well, what if your friend that is watching someone isolate? What do you do?
Well, I don't want you to put a lot of pressure on someone to sort of get back out there.
Yeah,
right?
be happy.
That's right. But I do want to encourage you to check in with that person, say, I miss you. When you're ready, I'd love to get together with you. We can do that on your own terms. If you're someone that feels like, okay, maybe I do want to start kind of getting out and doing stuff.
Sure.
Just give yourself permission to do it on your own terms. So maybe you show up late to an event and you leave early.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I'm going to let myself dip my toe into something, but maybe it's you want to go to church, but you don't want people asking questions and people coming all around you or whatever. So just kind of do it on your own terms. Consider seeing a therapist. Take your own time getting back out into public. All of these things can sort of be a gentle exit from isolation.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being kind to yourself.
Being kind to yourself over and over and over, normalizing you've been through a really hard experience and you're going to be really kind to yourself. So, but that's the end of this episode. And I hope that we've normalized some things that can kind of be confusing when people are going through grief. We hope that you'll share on social media what your comments are, and we hope that you'll share this with your friends.
We hope today's conversation brought you comfort and insight on your journey toward healing. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and share with a friend who might benefit. Remember, you can follow along on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Pella TV. We want to thank Side by Side Ministries and Adri and Marla Gruneweg for their financial support. This podcast was created by Donna Durham and Christy Vandervoort. It was produced and recorded by Monty Godike.